Good morning, fourth graders. Welcome back. This is page 227 in your math workbook. It's your math boxes that I asked you to take a look at yesterday. And I'm going to work through these with you, and you can check your answers. And if you got stuck, then it'll also be some direction in what to do. So as we're doing this, if you want to work through it on your own, don't just write in the answers. If you weren't sure, hit pause, give it a try, go back and check, okay? So taking a look at this first one. Lawrence has 5 CDs in his backpack. Each CD weighs 1/8 pound. How much do they weigh altogether? This is going to be your answer at some point, but let's leave that blank for now because we got to do some work before we get to the answer. First, they want this written in words. We have 5 groups of 1/8. In an addition equation, we're just going to take this fraction and we're going to write it 5 times because we need to add that fraction. 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. 5 CDs means 1/8 5 times. And then you got to think back to how do we add or subtract fractions, because the process is pretty similar. What we need to remember is that we have a numerator and a denominator. I kind of told you, you can remember it because we live in North Dakota and numerator is on top, denominator on the bottom, North Dakota. Good way to remember it for us. What we need to remember is when we add fractions, the denominator is always going to stay the same as long as all the denominators are the same in our addition problem. So all the way through here, we're going to end up with 1/8 down there at the bottom. Then to get the numerator, or get our answer for the numerator, we just have to add what we have in our numerator. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Give you a second just to think about that. And obviously that would be 5/8. And that's going to be your answer up here in a little bit, but let's do the multiplication equation first. So it's a lot like writing it in words. It's going to be a 5, but if you look, see how I wrote my 5 a little bit higher? Just wait a second, and then you can write this in. It's going to be 5 times 1/8. Anytime that you're multiplying a fraction by a whole number, what I told you to do to make it a little easier is to put the 5 over a 1. It's like having 5 wholes. Think about it, if I had 5 pizzas, imagine your pizzas, they're 5 circles. If I said somebody was at an eating contest and they ate 5 pizzas, that means that they ate all 5 of them. Okay? So, what we need to do though to finish this, we're saying he gets, or these weigh 1/8, each one of them weighs 1/8 of a pound. So, 1/8 of 5 pounds. How we solve that is we simply multiply straight across. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. 5 times 1 is 5, and 1 times 8 is 8. So your answer for number 1 should have been 5/8 pounds. So now let's move on to number 2. We're going to try and move through these quickly. And as I mentioned yesterday in some of my videos, if I get moving too fast for you or you need an extra second, just feel free to hit pause on your on the YouTube video here. And when you get caught up, hit play and we'll continue on. But I kind of want to keep moving fast here so that the videos aren't too long. Alright, this one I said if you didn't have a protractor at home, it'd be kind of hard to measure this, but I will give you the answer in case you did have a protractor at home and you measured it, so you're not wondering what the actual measure was. But the first thing we have to do, we have angle MRS. And if you notice, the R is in the middle of the name. That's why it's the vertex of the angle. Okay? So, what we need to remember, it's either acute or obtuse, they're telling us. An acute angle has to be greater than 0 degrees, but less than 90. And an obtuse angle is greater than 90, but less than 180. So our benchmark here, what we kind of use for comparison, is probably a right angle. And I know mine probably isn't a perfect right angle here. In fact, I guarantee it's not a perfect right angle. But a right angle makes a perfect corner. And you have to compare angle MRS to ABC. If it's smaller than ABC, it's acute. And if it's larger, it's obtuse. And if you look, ABC would be something like that. Because it's smaller, it's not this far over, we can label this as an acute angle. There's no real good way for me to measure it where you're going to be able to see it, but the measure of MRS, angle MRS, is 35 degrees if you measured at home. Remember, when you do that at home, you need to use a straight edge to extend your lines so that they come out the top and the side of the protractor. Let's move on to box 3. We're adding fractions here, or in some cases finding the missing fraction. We already know that when our denominators are the same, we're always going to have that denominator. So here you should have had fifths. This one's pretty easy. 3 plus 1 is 4. On letter B, your denominator is thirds. 1 plus 1 is 2. This one is a little trickier, so here's what you got to be thinking. We know, though, the one thing that we know is that our denominator is going to be 10. Tenths plus tenths equals tenths. Now what we're thinking is 4 plus something is 7. Or another way to think about it is go 7 minus 4. 7 minus 4 is 3, 2, 1, 3. So if you look, now we can go back and check. This is a step that's really important that I don't think we always take the time to do. We got our denominators. 4 plus 3 is 7. Hey, we got it right. You can always go back and check that way. Looking at letter D, same type of deal. This time we're going to have 12s. And what we're figuring out is something plus 5 is 7. Well, we're pretty good at that. Or you could think 7 minus 5, but it might be easier. 2, I just gave it away. What plus 5 is 7? And obviously that's 2. 2 plus 5 is 7. And this one's just a pretty normal one. Your denominator is sixths, and 4 plus 5 is 9. Let you take a look at those real quick. Make sure you check your answers. If you made a mistake, go ahead and rework that. Don't just write in the answer. That's probably not good. We need to actually do the work and do the thinking. One more box before our writing and reasoning one. All right, so this is the one we got to remember our conversion factors. 16 ounces, I'm going to abbreviate, equals 1 pound, okay? So if I had 2 pounds, I would need to take this and multiply it by 16. 2 times 16 is 3, 2, 1, 32 ounces. Now, this one might be a little tricky for you, so I'm going to probably write up top here and you can follow along, because it's just like we did in the first box. We're taking a fraction and multiplying it by a whole number. The whole number here is going to be 16. I said whenever you do that, put 16 over 1. Now multiplying is pretty easy. It's just multiplying straight across. 1 times 16 is 16. And 2 times 1 is 2. So what we have to do now, what we have to remember is, you wouldn't say, if someone said, how many ounces is 1/2 pound? You wouldn't say 16½ ounces. That would be weird. No one talks like that. No one measures like that. So what you have to do is you have to remember that this literally says 16 divided by 2. And some of you might be able to do that in your head, 16 divided by 2. But some of you might actually have to do our partial quotient division. how many 2's, so what you should be thinking is, how many 2's can go into 16? And you can't do 10 because 2 times 10 is 20. It's too much. So you might just try 5. 2 times 5 is 10. And you subtract. Multiply your outsides to get your inside. 2 times 5 is 10. Subtract. 6 minus 0 is 6. 1 minus 1 is 0. You can put the 0 if you want. You don't have to put the 0. Now we're thinking something times 2 equals 6. And that is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract again. 6 minus 6 is 0. Your answer is right there. How many ounces would it be? Add these up. 8. 1/2 pound was 8 ounces. Letter C. 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. So, 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. This is another one of those ratio problems I talked about. 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. So we want to know how many tons would equal 6,000 pounds. Well, what do you have to do to get from here to here? What times 2,000 gets you 6,000? In order to do that, you would have to multiply by 3. Whatever you do to this side, you have to do to this side. 2,000 times 3 is 6,000. 1 times 3 is 3. So this should be 3 tons. You can check that too. 3 times 2,000 is 6,000. All right, meters. There are 100 centimeters in a meter. So if there was 1 meter, this would be 100 centimeters. How many meters would you need then to get to 400 centimeters? 1 meter, 100 centimeters. 400 centimeters, you should have had 4 meters. This one, you can just kind of multiply. Every 1 meter has 1,000 millimeters. So here, what you need to do to solve this is 5, excuse my smart board, it's got that goofy spot in it, 5 times 1,000 millimeters. Because you have 5 meters, each one has 1,000. The answer here should have been 5,000 millimeters. Okay. Looking at our reasoning. It says, what are 2 different fractions that you could write to answer problem 3E and explain? All right, when we solved E here, we would end up with 9/6. So that is one of the answers. I didn't simplify it earlier. But we also just talked about that with what this literally says is 9 divided by 6. So what you can do using partial quotients is go 9 divided by 6. How many times can 6 go into 9? 1. 6 times 1 is 6. And subtract. 9 minus 6 is 3. When this number is smaller than that, you are done. This is your answer. This is your remainder. And this, if you're reporting it as a fraction, is your denominator. So the answer here would be 1 3/6. Now some of you are probably like, okay, well another option would have been 1 3/6. But some of you are probably like, well hey, 3/6 is the same as 1/2. So it can also be 1 1/2. Obviously then you could use anything that's equivalent to 1/2. 1 2/4 would technically be correct, even though you're using 1/6. 1 4/8 technically equivalent, because 4/8 is equivalent to 1/2. So when I ask you to explain, you could just say that 9/6 is equal to 6, 6 plus 3, 6. 6, 6 is equal to 1, comma, so it is also 1 and 3, 6. And then if you did a half, you could explain that 3/6 is half. All right, those are our math boxes for today. Hope you did great on them, and I'll be seeing you soon with your lesson for today.